Welcome to my Trump versus Harris winter predictions, so let's start. And there we go, so let's start off for the main ones. For Illinois, I think Illinois, it would definitely drop from 2020 and from 2016, which was almost the same margin in both elections, and I think this would still be a Harris win, although it would drop to, I'm gonna say, 15% to 17% around that margin. While for other states, well, for Kansas, if it was like Biden versus Trump, I would put Kansas as likely R, but with Harris, the vice president, I think it would drop a bit more in the Democratic vote. It will probably be around, I'm gonna say 14% to 16%. And while for states like Colorado is still trending to the left, and even with Harris, who does have a way lower approval rating compared to Biden, it would still be a safe Democrat win, although I would say probably like it would be around the margin of 12% to 14%, but I wouldn't even be surprised if in this scenario, it would still vote to the left of 2020. And I know there's one major one you're seeing right here, and that is for Iowa. Iowa, you know, with someone like Donald Trump, I think Donald Trump, as you can see, if you compare it to previous elections, it really has trended really to the right because of his of Trump's appeal and the rules, and towards farmers especially. He's also likely to pick someone from Iowa as his running mate perhaps, so that's gonna help him. Still, I think it would be around 11% to 13% in that case, so I'm gonna say barely a safe margin on the dot at 12%. While for South Carolina, I will say it was really tough to decide whether or not this would be a likely state or a safe state. I think even though Donald Trump also has really low approval rating, I think I'm gonna keep it as safe, but I wouldn't be surprised if this would drop to likely. And let's just go to the likely states. So for the first one, that would be in Florida. So for Florida, as seen in 2020, if we go, in 2022 I should say, if we go to the governorship, according to CNN, I think DeSantis winning by that landslide margin is really just more horrible news for the Democrats in Florida, and I think on the presidential level, this trend will continue. I don't think it will be a safe R win by 20%. I think it very well could be a safe R win for Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis, but I think Donald Trump does like appeal with independence, just enough for me to drop it to likely, or I think still he would win here by a I'm gonna say 9% to 11%. So, and tells you how red Florida is. And for Ohio, the Buckeye state, it would I think with Harris it would be way more favorable for the GOP. It wouldn't be a safe state, I don't think that, but it still would be a Republican win here by 9% to 11%, but all of this really depends on Biden's popularity and so many things. And moving on to the 2nd district of Maine. So the 2nd district, it did drop off in 2020, but 2016 it almost was a 20%, a safe win for Donald Trump, and I think that could very well happen because of Harris. I do have President Trump winning here by the same margin as Ohio and Florida, so basically 10%, and we're getting more and more closer to in the other states. So for Alaska, it is a state that it is trending Democrats long term, and for 2020 it still was a double-digit win for Alaska for the GOP, so still not gonna be a blue state. I do think it would be, I'm gonna say 9 to 11%, but it really could be even lower. I wouldn't be surprised by that. It just depends on a whole lot of issues. So Alaska is really one to watch out for. And for for Texas, so Texas, it is by far one of Trump's weakest states, because I think Texas establishment traits against Trump's populism, it really doesn't mesh well. He did win here in 2016 by 9%, but 2020 he barely won here by a likely margin. Against Harris, he would do better. It all depends on the economy and that sort of stuff, but I still see it wouldn't be a safe margin nor a lean margin. I think Donald Trump would win in Texas by an okay margin of 8% to 10%. I think that's probably right on the dot, but we will see how things go. moving on to the states that are barely likely states. So first of all, for Virginia in 2016, it went to Hillary Clinton, barely by a lean margin. Then it really took a turn in 2020 and went for Biden by double digits. I think it would still be a likely win for Harris, just because of the trends in certain areas in Virginia. It could be really close. I'm gonna say it's gonna be a Harris win here by 5% to 7%. It could drop to lean D, but it depends on the economy. But for now, likely D win there. And for New Mexico, I'm not too sure how well Harris would do with the Hispanic vote. I know she would do poorly for sure, but I just don't know how bad she would do. And Donald Trump's appeal is really towards anti-socialist Latinos, which has helped him in Florida. But talking about New Mexico, it would be quite closer for sure. It would be even closer than, I'm gonna bet that closer than 2016 for sure. It would be a likely win for me. I'm not too sure how well his Trump's appeal would work in states like New Mexico, but I still think Harris would win here by 5% to 7%, just barely a likely state. And for Maine at large, I think I'm gonna say if Trump runs some populism, he would do better in Maine and probably could even win here, the 2nd district, by a safe margin. We're just not too sure in so many things, but I think Maine at large would be a Democrat victory, 100% for sure. It just depends on the margin. It wouldn't be 2016 sort of close, but it wouldn't be almost a landslide victory for Democrats like 2020. So I'm gonna cut it in half and say it's gonna be a Democrat victory by 6% probably. I'm gonna make a guess there. And that's it for the likely states. So for the first lean state, that is almost a likely state, for Minnesota. So Minnesota, it is one of the states that has the strongest hold by the Democrats. The Democrats have the strongest hold in the state. And it would drop to a lean margin just like 2016, but it would not be that close, I think, because Trump just doesn't have the appeal that he used to have before. I'm gonna say this would be a Harris win of 3 to 5%. The Democrats will help her, and she would be able to maybe win here by a likely margin, but I think her poll ratings would just not get the turnout from many voters, but still a Democrat win by 3 to 5%. And for another state that is kind of similar in some ways, so New Hampshire in 2016, it almost went to Trump, but then it took a really harsh trend to the left in 2020, and in 2022, if we saw in the Senate election, it also was a Democrat landslide victory. Not landslide, but a huge win for the Democrats. And I think even though Harris is really a poor nominee, she is really either C tier or D tier, whether you like it or not, she still would win New Hampshire. It just depends on how Biden is doing, but I still think I wouldn't be surprised if New Hampshire is a likely state, but I'm gonna say lean D by 3 to 5%. And now we're getting to the battleground territories. So I don't know where to start, so let's start off for North Carolina. So North Carolina has always been that one state that is just, recently talking about, that is just too far away for the Democrats to win. And Harris would just not be able to get the momentum and the coalition in 2024, of course. I still think it probably would be like Trump's 2016 win. So I'm gonna say this would be a Trump win by 1% to 3%. I think 2% would be just around the margin that Trump would win here. It would be close, but definitely I don't see a way that Harris would win unless Biden's approval are really high. Furthermore, let's go close to the West Coast. So for Nevada was one of the few places in 2022 where the Republicans did well. In 2020, Democrats did well here. The margin did not change at all from 2016. It technically did vote to the right of 2016, but it was barely a trend. And Harris, I don't know how her appeal with Latinos would be. it really would depend on a whole lot of issues, but I think she would do way worse with Latino voters than Joe Biden for sure, which is why I do think this would be one of the pickups for Donald Trump. I'm really torn because I could see this as a tilt win for Donald Trump or as a lean win, but I do have the margin being around 0.5% to 2.5% for Donald Trump here, so technically a lean state, barely a low lean state. And for the Rust Belt, for the major one, I think if Harris is able to get enough black turnout, then I think this would be kind of like 2016 2.0 in Wisconsin, just a high tilt win for Donald Trump. I don't see her doing well with some working class voters, but I also don't see Donald Trump doing well with independent voters, which is really why this election would be really close. I think Wisconsin, with Harris being a Med nominee, just like Trump, but I don't know, man, it's really tough, but I'm gonna say it's gonna be a narrow win for Donald Trump by the same margin as Nevada, by 0.5% to 2.5%. This could easily be a tilt state. Don't get me wrong, but I still think Harris' low approval is just too much. But we will see how Trump's approval is in 2024 as well. And I think that's it for the lean states. So moving on, all these states are basically gonna be really close. So for the first one, that is a high tilt margin for Georgia. So Georgia is one of the few areas that Harris would just not have to worry too much because of how the trends are just simply working out by themselves, and whoever the Democrat nominee is in 2024, they are probably gonna win Georgia almost no matter what, as long as you just are an okay candidate, not a horrible one. I'm gonna say Harris would win here. She could win here by a lean margin, but I think it would be a tilt margin. I'm probably gonna say 0.75% win for Harris here. I think her being African American would help her, and yeah, that would be enough for her. And Trump's independent appeal, especially in Georgia, is not that good, so that's gonna help her. Furthermore, let's go to Michigan. So Michigan could very well be one of the closest states in 2024 if it's Harris versus Trump, I should say. I do think in this matchup, it would really vote to the right of Georgia. I think just because Georgia's trending more to the left, I do think if she's able to get it depends on who her nominee is as vice president, because if her VP is someone from the Rust Belt, then Michigan would vote to the left of Georgia. But I still see Harris winning here. Trump's Rust Belt appeal could flip this state in 2024 against Harris especially, but I think the black turnout would be enough to counter that and just be a Democrat win here. Barely by 0.5%. And for another one that is kind of similar to Michigan, for the 2nd district, for Nebraska's 2nd district. So the 2nd district, it was a decent win of 6.6% for Biden, but in 2016 it went to Donald Trump. But the issue is that Trump has lost his appeal and is bleeding quite a lot in the suburbs, which is why I do see the incoming vice president winning here. I'm not too sure what the margin would be. It could be a lean win for her, but I'm gonna say a tilt win of 0.5%. I don't see Donald Trump getting the momentum, even in the 2nd district of Nebraska, just because he just lacks with suburban voters. Harris does lack appeal to working class voters, so it's really both candidates do have a lot of weaknesses. So let's go to basically, in my opinion, the ultimate toss-ups in this scenario for Arizona and Pennsylvania. So Arizona, this would really be close, because Harris would do terribly with some voters that really came to Biden voters. Arizona barely went to Biden in 2020 by 0.3%. In 2016, it went to Trump by 3.5%. And Harris, she wouldn't do that well. This is really hard, man, because Trump would also do terribly, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see a third-party candidate do quite well in Arizona, and they probably can do well, and we could see something like 2016 Utah style. But this is basically a coin toss. If the economy is bad or is just struggling to some degree, I do think Trump would win here. But if Biden's approval rating is okay, then I do think Harris would win here. For now, I do think, I'm gonna say maybe the Latino appeal problem for Harris would just be the nail in the coffin, even though this would be extremely close, don't get me wrong. This is basically a toss-up, and I might even flip this in the next prediction I do. But for now, I'm gonna leave this as an President Trump won by 0.25%. It just it really depends on a whole lot of issues. And in my opinion, I really do think Vice President Harris should pick a vice president for her run, either from Pennsylvania or from Arizona, or like Mark Kelly or Josh Shapiro. That would help her quite a lot. And for the final one for Pennsylvania, so Pennsylvania in 2020, I should say, 2020, it went to Biden by 1.2%. Bear in mind, Pennsylvania is kind of like his home state, even though he was a senator of Delaware. Also, don't forget that Biden was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, but Harris. The issue is if Trump is able to really push Harris into being more of a progressive to steel workers and really those working class voters that rely on steel and would despise green energy, I think that would be good sign for Trump's working class appeal in Pennsylvania. And this is just like Arizona. This would 100% be close and would be a toss-up even until probably until election day. I'm gonna say that Trump would win here by a tilt margin, barely. And any factor could really change the trajectory of how these states vote like in 2024. But for now, I do see President Trump winning with 281 electoral votes, while Vice President Harris gets 257 electoral votes. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next video.